All right, let's arm you with the information now. Now, it's, for most of us common that we think that hijackings are taking place in the evening or also possibly in the early hours of the morning. At the same time, you look at, the number of safety measures and precautions that would be put in the evening. But it does seem like things have changed somewhat in this particular, sphere. So let's speak to Duma Ngcobo, Tracker COO, who joins us live now. Duma, thank you so much for your time this evening. A lot of us often think that, when we drive at night, we should be extra careful because that's when, hijacking, for example, may be taking place. But you're saying that, data is suggesting there may be a change in the business hours?
Yeah, I think we have seen quite a significant change, and that's coming out of the COVID period, where we had a lot more sort of home deliveries occurring, and that's changed the dynamic of the number of vehicles that are available on our roads. And that's created an additional opportunity for would-be criminals to target, say, delivery vehicles and the like.
So then, I suppose, as you say, from COVID to now, so what is the data showing us in terms of the numbers, if you have, as to what then are we looking at in terms of the hijacking and the growth in those numbers?
I think historically we always saw kind of a 55% split leaning towards thefts and a 45% leaning towards hijacking. And that was more or less the sort of national number. We are seeing a greater increase, almost a 50-50 split between hijackings and thefts nationally. Of course, in other provinces, hijacking is much higher, and we're seeing far greater numbers in those provinces specifically.
Give us a sense of the provinces.
In the province such as the Western Cape, we are seeing almost 80% of the incidents being sort of hijackings, and more 50-50 in Gauteng, and a slightly smaller number in hijackings in KZN. The challenge, I think, in KZN is the advent of more violent crime or more violence being utilized in the commission of said hijackings.
And I was going to ask about violence and how much of a factor is violence, especially when you look at some of these provinces. I mean, I'm looking at the data, for example, when you think of Naked Insurance, business tech also, being quoted as saying that it seems as they are, operating earlier on in the day. Hijackings, for example, accounting for 54% of vehicle thefts between 5 o'clock and 12 o'clock. That's during the day, and also 47% from 12 o'clock to around 9 p.m. and 25% between 9 p.m. and 5 o'clock. And that is, of course, around, some of these hijackings, according to Naked Insurance. So before we had a problem with your line there, we were talking about the issue of violence and how much it is a factor, particularly when you're looking at, hijacking, and one can expect it there. But do we also see a bit of it in theft as well?
Yeah, I think the issue of violence should be understood in this manner. So we've seen a lot of what we call hostage taking or kidnapping. That would be for the, either trying to deplete someone's bank account or empty someone's bank account during the commission of the crime. In KZN, however, we've seen a lot more injuries occurring, actually people whose lives are getting affected during the commission of a hijacking. Whereas in Gauteng, we tend to see, dare I say, more professionalized kind of crime syndicates, and therefore they're more after the assets as we see it. So the patterns that I think were reflected by Naked are largely reflective of the changing patterns. Gone are the days where early in the morning on the way to work, you're likely to be hijacked and nothing happens during the day, and then it picks up in the evening. We're seeing much more of a more even spread, also because of home deliveries and so on, that are really changing the dynamic of hijacking. Thefts, on the other hand, tend to be on a Saturday and Sunday during the day.
Sure. Talk to us about, some of the hot spots, because we talk about provinces, we talk about violence and of course theft as well, but it does seem things are changing with the hot spots as well.
Yes. So historically, we would have spoken about blue light brigades. We would have spoken about what we call a pavement special. And typically, a blue light brigade is where criminals pretend as if they're law enforcement. And you'd see that on the major highways and byways, say between Mpumalanga and Gauteng, or between Free State and Gauteng. So you'd see one blue light on the dashboard, individuals pretending to be law enforcement. We would then see pavements where they block you in front of your gate. Those patterns are starting to change quite significantly, where now it can happen literally at your workplace. We've even seen it happening in some schooling events where hijackings are starting to take shape.
And Duma, there's something else, of course, that sometimes gets posted on social media, and I wonder how much of it still happens right now, and that is around spiking. People talking about the fact that there will be spikes on the road, and then you must not stop and all of that. How much of a concern is that still?
It's quite a significant concern. So if you see the Pretoria North area, sort of the Sifako Mahato Brits area, as well as on the major highway to Rustenburg, we've seen, objects being placed on the road. You can see a plastic being placed on the road, and you ride over it, thinking it's something, sort of not to be worried about. And no sooner rather than later, your tires are flat and you stop, trying to inspect your vehicle. That happens particularly at night. Now, the key change there is that we're starting to see it earlier, say at 8 p.m. as opposed to after 9 p.m. And those are some of the things that people, I think, need to look out for.
So what do I do, before I let you go, what do I do then if I find myself in that situation and my tire's flat? Do I stop, or, let's arm the public with information?
I think the first thing with any trips these days, planning is important. There's tools like sharing your journey or letting your loved ones know when you are leaving and which route you are using. It sounds almost Big Brother, but you have to share as much information as possible because you never know what can go wrong. That's the first thing. The second thing is try and drive as long as you can, notwithstanding, I know different vehicles have different tire models. So sometimes the vehicle can't be operated any further. I think the third thing is stick within the speed limit. Often a lot of us are driving at high speeds at night, and that causes the danger to be much more prevalent. And then I think the last thing is just be aware. Vigilance is the number one thing we always advocate for. Yeah. Often we find that people are on their phones or not really concentrating fully on the road. And sometimes you may not see the object that's in front of you.
Definitely. Concentration and being aware of your surroundings is quite the big one. Thank you so much, Duma, for your time and for really just arming us with information. That is Tracker COO there, Duma Ngcobo.